What if being a great talker is the very reason your business isn't growing? Did you know telling isn't selling? It's actually asking great questions. And great leaders ask great questions. Today's episode, I'm going to give you 2 things to stop doing and 3 things to start doing immediately. Because if you like to talk too much, that could actually repel the very people you desire to serve. So here's the first thing to stop doing. These 2 things, they actually go hand in hand. So I'm going to give them to you right now, straight up. The first one is this: stop oversharing and stop sharing so many stories. Have you ever met the person, I bet you have, where every time you share something, it reminds them a story and they go on and on with this story? And it just doesn't happen once in a conversation. It's like every time you say something, it reminds them of some lesson they learned, which leads to some story. Then that story reminds them of some other story. Hey, if that's how you are, I get that. The reason I'm qualified to talk about this is because I'm on that journey too. I like to talk. And so over the past decade, at least, I've been working on asking intentional questions and being an active listener. So the 2 things to stop doing: stop oversharing, especially when it comes to personal stories. The 3 things I want you to consider doing right away that could change your sales business is this. The first one is I want you to start keeping track. If you're making phone calls, I want you to pull out your iPhone and use the timer. And when you're on a call, I want you to pay attention to the amount of time you talk versus the time that the other person talks. This is important because self-awareness is the first step to any change for all of us. So I want you to become hyper aware of how much actual time in a conversation you're talking versus the person on the other end, whether it's in person or over the phone. It's a little bit easier to do it over the phone. My coach had me do that actually. The next thing I want you to do, the second thing out of the 3, is this. I want you to actually tally the, you know, where you draw the little line. Tally how many questions you ask in a conversation and just start paying attention to how many questions you ask versus statements you make. The reason asking questions is important is because, well, there's a few reasons, probably 3 at least. Number 1, people will tell you how to win with them if you will ask questions and listen. And then number 2 is once you ask questions, it will become clear to you if your product or your service, depending on the kind of business you have, is in alignment with them, meaning it could actually help them meet their goal. And then number 3 is this. Did you know that on average, most people in our country right now are lonely? I remember USA Today had a big head news article at the end of the year, a few years ago, and it said Americans are more lonely, isolated, and depressed than ever. It's like, how can that be true? So just know that the person that you're talking to, there's a chance that maybe they're lonely. And what a blessing it is if you choose to be the leader by asking questions. You could actually not only potentially do more business, you could make somebody's day better because you took an interest in them. And then the third one that I want to leave you with before I give you one of the best book recommendations is I want you to think about being a student. What would it look like for you to invest intentionally over this next year? Being a student of communication. The goal of communication is to connect. And you get better at communication daily, not in a day. So I want you to start thinking about how you're going to be intentional to become more effective communicator. By the way, I'm convinced that communication is the one thing to focus on that makes your home life better. It makes a relationship with your spouse better. It makes a relationship with your friends better. It makes a relationship with your clients and your people, your team that you work with better. It's the one thing that makes everything better. So why not go all in and invest in being a more effective communicator? So you may be asking, Chris, how do I do that? Well, maybe you start, instead of sporadically listening to podcasts, what if you listen to a podcast that talks about specifically communication? John Maxwell is a great mentor. He's somebody that I consider an effective communicator, right? He takes what could be complicated subjects or complex topics, and he breaks them down nice and simple. Somebody that is a professional at what they do has a way of simplifying things. John Maxwell actually calls it put the cookies on the lower shelf so people could reach them. So you can be intentional to be an effective communicator by coming up with a growth plan, meaning you're intentional about the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the people that you're studying. I mean, look up communication on YouTube. There's so many people that are great at communication. I want to leave you with a book recommendation. That big picture, this is important when it comes to winning with people in your business. And that's the title. It's by John Maxwell, and it's called Winning with People. When you ask questions and you're more curious about people, people appreciate that. And people will pick up on that. And they sense that you're interested in them. And people fundamentally want to do business with people that they like, know, and trust, or want to be like, meaning they look up to them. So I'm wondering, will you choose to be intentional about your growth, or will you just maybe not take it so seriously when it comes to being an effective communicator? By the way, if you've listened this whole time, thank you for tuning into my podcast channel. Will you do me a favor? The majority of people that tune in are not subscribers. So will you hit the subscribe button and let me know the one thing that you're focused on improving when it comes to your communication? Is your next step a podcast? Is it reading a book? I'll give you a few more. Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. The one line in the whole book that stands out is everyone communicates. Oh, that's John Maxwell. Susan Scott says the conversation is the relationship. The conversation is the relationship. Susan Scott, Fierce Conversations. John Maxwell, everybody wins, few connect. And then let's go winning with people. As far as podcasts, one of the podcasts that I'm enjoying, and I'm listening not just to the content of what they share, but I'm listening to their presentation, how they share it. It's called The One Thing by Jay Papasan, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. And then if you want me to send you the link, just mention that and I'll send you the link to that one. So especially moving into a new year, how will you choose to level up in your communication? And I bet if you're like me, you may be able to go the next level in your sales business by actually talking less. You actually could be saying more. We'll see you next time.